In this video, we're going to be talking about parallel or perpendicular lines. Before we can get into those, we have to see what are parallel and perpendicular lines. We're going to look at that inside the coordinate plane to discover that relationship. So y equals 2/3 x minus 5. If I were to graph this, I would start at -5 on the y-axis. That's my y-intercept. And my slope is 2/3, so I'm going to go up to the right 3. Up to the right 3. Or I could go down to the left 3. I have an increasing function with a positive slope. Connect the dots. I've got that line. Okay? For the second line, -3y equals -18 minus 2x, I got to get this in slope-intercept form. So I have to solve for y. How am I going to do that? I'm going to divide everything by -3. So I'll get y equals 6 plus 2/3 x. Be really careful with your negatives and your positives. All right, I'm going to rewrite this so that it's in the more traditional slope-intercept form. All right, if I'm going to graph this, I'm going to start at 6. I'm going to go up 2 over 3, up 2 over 3, or down 2 to the left 3. Okay? If I connect the dots here, I will get that line. What do you notice? What do you notice about the equations of these two lines? Well, the equations of these two lines have the same exact slope but different y-intercepts. All right, and you notice when I graph these lines are never going to intersect. Okay, so those are parallel lines. Okay, these are two lines that will never intersect. Okay, and the symbol for parallel is two vertical lines up and down. Okay, so parallel lines have the same slope but different y-intercepts. They need to have different y-intercepts or else we're going to be talking about the same exact line. If they have the same slope and the same y-intercept, they're the same exact line. All right, so those aren't going to be parallel lines. Parallel lines are two lines that will never intersect. All right, so we could say line 1 is parallel to line 2. So this right here means is parallel. That's my parallel symbol. Two vertical lines right up and down. Okay, so those are parallel lines. What about perpendicular? Okay, so you see with my first equation, I need to get that into slope-intercept form. So I'm going to rewrite it here just to give myself some room. I'm going to add 8x to both sides. And then I'm going to divide everything by 2. So I'll get y equals 4x plus 3. If I'm going to graph this, I'm going to start at 3. I'm going to go up 4 to the right 1, or down 4 to the left 1. Okay, just plotting a couple other points. I'm going to graph this. Oops, that's not the best. Let me try again. Here we go. Okay, so we get y equals 4x plus 3. That's line 1. Okay, line 2, y equals -1/4 x plus 3. So that has the same y-intercept. We're going to go down 1 to the right 4. Down 1 to the right 4. This is a decreasing function. I know that because my slope is negative. All right, so if I were to graph that, all right, this is an example of perpendicular. And perpendicular lines intersect at 4 right angles. Okay, so perpendicular lines are two lines that intersect to form four right angles. So they intersect at a right angle. All right, here's the first right angle, second, third, and fourth. Okay? So, our symbol for perpendicular, we could say that line 1 is perpendicular to line 2. This right here means perpendicular. Okay? Now, if I have two equations of a line, how can I determine whether or not those lines are perpendicular? Well, it's going to come down to the slope again. My slope of my first line was 4. My slope of my second line was negative 1/4. What's the relationship between those two? Well, one is 4, one's negative 1/4. Okay? Those are opposite reciprocals of each other. Okay, so perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes. Okay, so 4, the opposite of 4 is negative 4. The reciprocal of negative 4, flip it, negative 1/4. Okay, this right here is key for this lesson. Parallel lines have the same exact slope, so their m values are the exact same, but they have different y-intercepts. And perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes. It's a two-parter. Okay? So figure out what the slope of one of your lines is. Take the opposite reciprocal to find its perpendicular slope. Okay? So let's determine whether the lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So in order to do this, we need to look at the slopes. All right, so in line 1, I have the slope is negative 3. Line 2, the slope is negative 12/4. Well, negative 12 divided by 4 is negative 3. So these are the same slope. So we could say that line 1 is, I'm going to get a different color just so you see it, parallel, oops, that's really bad, parallel, two vertical lines to line 2. Okay? So these are parallel. All right, what about part B? Line 1, the slope is 1/2. Line 2, the slope is 2. So these are reciprocals of each other, but that's it. That's it. To be perpendicular, they would need to be opposite reciprocals. So this is neither. Neither parallel or perpendicular, okay? Because they don't satisfy either having the same slope or opposite reciprocal slopes. Okay? What about in part C? Part C, your slope of line 1 is 1. So your rise over run is 1/1. Your slope of line 2 is negative 1, which would be negative 1/1. Okay? Notice how these are opposite reciprocals. One is positive 1, and the other is negative 1. Okay? And the reciprocals of 1 is just 1. Okay? So the opposite of 1 is negative 1. The reciprocal of negative 1 is still negative 1. So these are opposite reciprocals. Therefore, these are perpendicular. We can say that line 1 is perpendicular to line 2. All right, and then last but not least, we have part D. I'm telling you 2 points that the line goes through. So we are going to need to use our slope formula to calculate what the slope is. All right, so first off, I'm going to do line 1. All right, my slope is going to be negative 1 minus 2 over 0 minus negative 2, which is going to be negative 3 over 2, so negative 3 over 2. For line 2, my slope is going to be 3 minus negative 1 all over 2 minus negative 4. All right, plus a positive on both the top and the bottom. So 3 plus 1 is 4. 2 plus 4 is 6. 4 divided by 6, if I simplify that fraction, like I always want to do when I'm doing slope, I'm going to get 2/3. Okay, notice here. Negative 3 halves and 2/3. These are opposite reciprocals. So negative 3 halves, the opposite of that is positive 3 halves. The reciprocal of 3 halves is 2/3. So these are opposite reciprocals. Therefore, these two lines are perpendicular. Line 1 is perpendicular to line 2. Okay? So it all comes down to the slope. Same slope, parallel lines. Perpendicular slope is going to be, parallel lines have the same slope. Perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes. It's a two-parter there. All right, in the next video, we will talk about how to write the equation of parallel and perpendicular lines. Again, it all comes down to slope.